What's up, leaders? Scott Matthew here from Nix Your Limits and the Student Leadership Podcast. Super excited for another episode to bring you. We are going to be interviewing my new very good friend, Brittany. She is awesome. She is from the Washington State area, Seattle, Washington area. She is a current student at the University of Washington. Go Huskies. And she is going into finance and accounting. And she is actually, as a sophomore in college, she's about to publish her first book. Like, crazy. It's so awesome. So she talks a little bit about that. We talk about leadership. We talk about how you can try to shift your mindset to focus on the potential positive possibilities that life has in store for you. I'm super excited for you to hear from her story and to be able to learn from her. And so, without further ado, let's jump into the episode. I am so excited to be able to bring you all of the goodness and expertise from my new good friend, Brittany Do. Brittany, thank you so much for being a part of this. Welcome. Why don't you just start us off, share a little bit about you, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Scott. I'm super excited. I'm Brittany, and I'm a college sophomore at the University of Washington studying finance and accounting. Currently staying busy during quarantine because I am working on some midterms that are coming up and really just trying to live life and enjoy everything that life throws at me. Currently in the midst of writing a book, so that's definitely also keeping me busy, but super enjoyable, super fulfilling.
That is awesome, super cool to hear. But we can't just skip over that so fast. You are writing a book right now, and that's a big deal. And I think that's super cool as a college student. And so I know we can talk more later, but give us a quick snapshot. What's your book going to be about? What are you trying to accomplish with it?
Yeah. So it's still honestly a wild idea to me. I didn't really accept it in my mind until like 2 months into writing. I was like, huh, writing a book, imagine that, right? But basically it's about life and leadership together and how they both connect, because I feel like a lot of leadership books is like they silo leadership into one part of our life, or it's like, okay, you have to have this and this to be a leader, and it's like, no, you don't actually. Anyone can and is, or can be and is a leader, and that's especially what I want students to think about, because knowing that you have that much impact, especially the potential to impact more people than you think, is really powerful, honestly. And it really switches up that mindset that you have.
Super cool. That's awesome. I'm so excited for that. I'm excited to see it in real life when we get to that point. But that's awesome. And I love that kind of that lifestyle of leadership that, listen, like leadership doesn't come with a title, it doesn't come with a business card. It comes through your actions, through how you live. And so I'd be interested, Brittany, just share us with you a little bit about what's been your leadership journey. How have you kind of tried to be a leader at different stages of your life, whether that's involvement in different things or whatever, but just kind of summarizes for us your leadership journey.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been super involved in my community. It started off in ninth grade when I joined ASB at my school, and basically since then I've never looked back. Continued with ASB throughout high school up until senior year. In my sophomore year of high school, that's when I joined FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America, and also didn't really look back there, because once you start joining different organizations that you're really passionate about and you meet so many cool people and you have that supportive community, that's when I believe you really achieve your potential and you begin to flourish, because with supportive people by your side who are there encouraging you and telling you like, hey, you got this, I'm here for you, I will support you however I can, that is again really powerful. And being able to have that when you're so young, it makes you realize like, okay, I can support other people just like this, I can be a leader like how this other person was a mentor to me or a role model to me, and they've helped lead me through this wild journey called life, and that's what I can do for other people. So after attending a leadership camp called Mount Adams that was really impactful to me, I that's basically when everything happened, and I feel like it was a catalyst to my own leadership journey. And since then it's been a few years since my first time at Mount Adams, and still staying very involved in school. I'm in a couple RSOs, or registered student organizations on campus. And it's been really awesome just getting to learn more about the people that I work with and the people that we serve, because there's so many people at UW, like 50,000 people. And I know like a small fraction of those people, but really getting to know who they are as people and work with them towards this goal that we have in mind is so cool and super fulfilling.
That is awesome. That's super cool. There's a lot that I gained from that, and just hearing for all of you listeners out there of just like trying to do a little bit more, like get involved in different things, do more than just fill your seat time as a student, because there's so many great opportunities out there. I love that you mentioned, I wasn't even planning on talking about this, but like the size of the University of Washington as a student body, like that's such a huge asset of universities, like going to college and stuff, is the opportunity to network with students from all over the place. Like you would have never met, you would have never had a chance to meet someone like that or interested in that or anything like that. And that's just such a huge strength and of opportunity that a lot of times students don't recognize about going to college, is just that huge amount of people that you can meet and organizations that you can get involved in, like you had mentioned. So I want to kind of peel that back of what what about your mindset? Like what helped motivate you? What did you have to think about to encourage yourself to like step out of the bubble of just focus on your grades and get involved with different organizations? Because the reason I ask that is so many students, so many high school students that I work with a lot of the time, or even early college students, even, like there's just a lot I feel like holds them back from going out there, getting involved, doing other pieces. So what did you have to keep telling yourself to do that the way that you did?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have this story in their mind telling them, like, okay, you could reach out to this person who seems really cool and hang out with them, try to be friends and everything, but and it's just that but that's holding us back. And it's hard. It really is hard to not let that hold you back. But at the same time, sometimes you have to tell yourself, okay, this, like, I'm just a person, they're just a person, we're just two humans living in this world. And what if we become really good friends? Like, try to think about the positive and the, I guess, ideal situation that could happen. I actually have a story about this that I thought of, but in, let's see here, I think fall or winter quarter of last year, my two roommates and I, we were just in the cafeteria eating, and I noticed this girl who sat at the table next to us, and she was by herself. So I looked over at her and I was like, "Hey, like, do you want to come sit with us?" She was literally at the table next to us, so super easy for me to do. And like reaching out to her, I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert, so I feel like I've grown used to reaching out to people. And it's definitely a skill that needs to be practiced, because if I don't continue doing this in my life, then I know that I'm going to lose it, which is unfortunate, right? Because everyone has, like, being able to reach out to people is so cool and such a critical skill, because you can meet so many amazing people and like hear their stories. So what ended up happening is, like, she sat with us and we started talking. My roommates and I were also planning on baking that night. So I was like, "Hey, like, what's your number? Do you want to come bake with us?" And that's what we ended up doing. It was really fun. She ended up helping out because I think I messed up the recipe somehow, or like almost messed up the recipe. And she was like, "Wait, hey, or hold up. I think like you're supposed to do this." And I was like, "Oh, you're right." So otherwise, the recipe would not have gone as smoothly as it did. But basically, just telling yourself, like, thinking of the possibilities. Okay, I know that there's all these different ways that I could, that something could go wrong, or like, what if they don't like me? What if we don't end up being friends? But at the same time, like, what do you have to lose? Not really anything. It's just a second, 5 seconds of your time, maybe a little bit of rejection. Like, if she were busy, if she had other plans, like, okay, no big deal. She can't bake tonight, maybe like another night. But just trying to push yourself out of your comfort zone and think about what you can do more. because I feel like there's not many things in life that people do on their own. So finding people who you can really like live life with and create those long lasting memories is so amazing, because I know that like right now she's back in Japan because she's an international student, and we're like my two roommates and I and her, we're all very excited for the next time that we bake, and this time I won't mess up the recipe and break the whisk because I did end up breaking the whisk. But it's okay because things happen in life, and that's just how I try to approach it every day. I look at life as something that's built up of different memories, like both good and bad, but you learn from them. And life is just this huge learning experience to me.
Absolutely. That's super cool. And thanks for sharing that example. That's awesome. And you think about that mindset for everybody out there of like, of just choosing to focus on the positive possibilities. Like it's
Hmm.
so easy for us to naturally think like, well, like this could go wrong, right? That could go wrong. That could go wrong. But it's like, okay, and it is, it's a conscious decision to pivot your attention towards, well, what's the good thing could happen? And whether those good things are saving the cookies or anything else bigger, or whatever it was that you're
Hmm.
baking. But there's so many positive possibilities that can happen in situations. So if that's just practicing to network and engage with other people like you and your story, or if that's being a part of organizations, running for a leadership position or applying for a position, even though you're a student, even though you don't feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready yet, right? But what are those positive possibilities that you could accomplish through that thing? And by continuing to kind of practice that habit of focusing with your mindset of, let me look at these possibilities, let me look at that. It just will continue to unlock and open so many doors that you can walk through and take advantage of those opportunities. And I loved how you said just that importance of networking with people and being able to interact with them. That's so true. I use the phrase life is all people, and that's throughout your entire life. And if you can develop that skill to just take 5 seconds out of your day to like see that lonely person next to you and just like, hey, how are you? Like just to engage them and like, why don't you come sit with us? Or, even if it doesn't turn into a come sit with us, come bake with us kind of thing, but just an interaction, just practicing
Exactly.
that is so helpful. And I feel like so many students are staying in their own lane so much of the time that you miss out on those opportunities. And because you're not used to that, when you get into the workplace, it's going to be a lot harder for you to socialize and make friends. And because life is all people, that helps influence your success, no matter what industry you're going in. If you have a good vibe about you, if you're being able to work with people, be friendly, not necessarily like Mrs. Popularity kind of thing, or like not necessarily like you have to make everybody love you, but just having a positive vibe about you. It's so important. So you got to start figuring out how to do that right now. So
Oh
start
yeah.
right now. So that's super cool. I think that's a good thing. And I mentioned a habit of making that a habit of like every day try to talk to somebody new, right? And that kind of piece. But thinking about how you have been able to be involved a lot and be able to be a successful student and being able to write a book. Are you kidding me? So thinking about all of that, what have you had to like repeatedly do? What habits have you had to develop to make sure that you balance it all, to make sure that you've been able to still be successful in doing everything and still have a smile on your face, that you are enjoying it along the way? What habits have you had to develop to help you get to where you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely two things come to mind right off the bat. I have been creating to-do lists since like before my sophomore year of high school, and they work pretty well for me as long as I make sure that I have everything written down that I need to do or could do, and then I highlight the ones that I absolutely need to do because they're due tonight, they're due the next day. Have a meeting with someone. So definitely works for me, but I know that doesn't work for everyone. So there's other methods like the Pomodoro method, the I call it the tomato method because I think of tomatoes when I see it. But basically, it's like you work for 25 minutes and then you get a 5 minute break. And then you repeat that 3 times. And then your next break is going to be 15 minutes long. And I've used that periodically. I personally find that doesn't work as well for me because I get distracted and I start doing other things I like had planned out for later. But if I am on Zoom with a friend, then it works great for me because it helps hold me accountable for like what I'm supposed to be doing because I know that my friend is working hard. So I'm like, okay, I should be working on this task instead of like pivoting to something else because sometimes you just need to like sit down and get focused. So that is definitely another method that comes to mind in terms of just getting things done. I have used Google Calendar a lot since quarantine. I actually didn't use it ever like before this year. So it's really interesting. But like now all my classes are on Google Calendar, all of my meetings are on Google Calendar. I have a calendar like right behind me. So I just make sure that both those are synced up. And that way I don't miss any meetings that I have because there's people who are like looking forward to me being there because they're important meetings and everyone should be there hopefully if everyone can make it. So definitely really important for me to keep organized. Then that way I can also schedule like not so that way I don't make schedule too many meetings in one day so I can make sure that I accomplish everything that I need to do in terms of homework and studying. And for the second thing that comes to mind, definitely reaching out to my friends and making sure like to catch up with them because that was one of the things I made sure to do over the summer. Just like FaceTiming or Zooming a friend every 3 days. So then that way I can have that, I guess, social interaction, even though it's virtual, because during quarantine, like it can be really hard not being able to see many people aside from mostly your family. And it starts to take a toll on you because humans are social creatures. Like we're used to interacting with people and like meeting new people, seeing our friends, like all of that good stuff. So just finding an alternative method for that was really helpful for me because that way I could make sure that I balanced everything that I need to do in terms of like school, homework, and everything, but also have that downtime to like really talk to someone else and see how they're doing because I find that really valuable and like it energizes me also. Like last night I was helping one of my friends with her accounting homework because I had taken the class last winter and she's taking it right now. So we were just catching up normally at first and then after I think like half an hour or something, she was like, hey, like, can you help me with this worksheet? And I was like, yes, I got you. And it's also a really good way for me to, be reminded of what I learned in 215 because accounting builds on itself. And I was like, huh, that's a term that I haven't heard in a while. Let's Google it. Let's figure out what it is and how to solve that problem. And we ended up working it out and it was great. And we got to catch up. I got some solid accounting knowledge again. And it's just a good way to also de stress because that way you can talk about how you've been doing, how you've been feeling, and all of that. And again, really important during quarantine because the like social distancing is still very much a thing, unfortunately, and it who really knows how long it's going to last. But just making sure that you get to see people outside of your family. So then that way you're also used to interacting with other people because I feel like sometimes I'm so used to just interacting with my family that I don't feel the urge to like reach out to other people. But again, still very much a skill. So it's just like how you can get better at it. You can like your skill and that can diminish over time. So just making sure that you're being actively aware of that and you're continuing to grow is important.
Very cool. That's awesome. There's some good gold right there that I know all of our listeners are benefiting from. Those two key aspects of your time management, right? Again, being able to structure with your to-do list. I love how you mentioned that you write down your to-do list and then you go back and highlight the ones that are like, all right, like these got to be first. And I love that
Mhm.
because so many times we hold ourselves back just by taking everything out of our mind and just making a to-do list and then just start at the top and away we go. Sometimes you miss things that are really important. They just were further down the list
Yep.
and you got distracted by other stuff. So that's awesome. I love that. And then balancing relationships, right? Of just being able to say, like, I got to make sure I'm still connecting, checking in with my friends, checking in with my family, especially if you're away at school. and being able to kind of just have that balance. That's awesome. Like kind of the tempo of how you run your time and then the balance with your relationships. And both of those, I feel like, go into what we were talking about earlier of like they help structure you in a way that you are going to be better available for really cool opportunities because you have your time managed. Like you got a calendar behind you that you're checking with and then an app on your phone to balance it. You know where you need to be and when. That's awesome. And then you have good relationships of networking and that kind of thing so that you're ready for opportunity. And that's so key because then if one of those friends or if somebody you met was able to say, hey, actually, Brittany, there's this really cool opportunity for like an accounting student that somebody was telling me about or a teacher was telling me about. And I think it could actually be a cool thing for you. Why don't you check it out? That would have never happened if you were never keeping your relationships in balance, right? But
Yes.
then vice versa of like the to-do lists and structure of time management and stuff. If you didn't have your stuff together in terms of covering your classes and your responsibilities, you wouldn't feel confident in being able to say yes to an opportunity like that either. So everybody out there, like those are two fantastic habits that Brittany is sharing of like time management. You got to figure out what your tempo is of balancing things and then getting into your relationships and helping to manage those and network and grow that way too. Both vital in helping you be able to pursue any of those opportunities that could come knocking on your door. So that's awesome. I love that. That is super cool. And so, we kind of think about, there's been a lot of action that you've taken in being able to do all the cool things that you want to do. And what I want to hear now of actually like, what made you say like, you know what, I want to write a book, right? Like, what made you want to do that? Like, how did that happen?
So this kind of ties into what you said earlier about finding those opportunities and making sure that you can manage your time to adhere to those opportunities and make sure that you commit and all of that. So back in May, I found this program that helps support you in writing a book, but also publishing it. I thought that this was super cool because I've never been much of a writer. I've always been a lot more of a reader. And speaking of which, I actually have a few books on my desk right now that I would love to read soon. But I thought that this was such a cool opportunity. And I was thinking, hey, like it's quarantine. I have so much time on my hands, right? So I decided to apply to that program. I kind of jumped in head first. I thought about what I want to write about, and leadership was the only thing that stuck out to me as something that I could really write about. And at the time, I knew that I wanted to talk to different people to get their experiences and their perspectives also, because I didn't want it to just be my own. I don't know how interesting that a book of only my perspectives would be, but I basically applied. I did a call with the founder. I got in and I was super excited to start that journey. So it's been such a cool journey so far. And it officially started back in June. And since then, it's been what, like 4, almost 5 months. And if you had told me back in April, May, even June, that I would talk to over 80 people about leadership, I'd be like, are you sure? Like, huh, that sounds like a lot of people. Are you sure about that? It's just absolutely wild, but it's been such a fun time. And it shows you how many people are willing to connect and to just they're just open to talk with you about their experiences, especially as a student, because you're a student in high school or in college and people love to help out students. Like I've heard this so many times before because I'm majoring in business. If you reach out to someone for a coffee chat or coffee less chat, as I call them, because I personally don't like coffee. So I just abbreviate as like CLC. But if you reach out to someone for an informational interview or like 30 minutes, 15 minutes to talk about what they're doing in their current role and how they got there, they're for the most part more than happy to help. But if you're graduated and you're in your first or second job, then that rate of like the percentage of people who are more willing than not as willing to talk with you declines. And it's unfortunate, but it's it's a thing, it's how it goes. And just really taking advantage of it now when you're still a student and taking advantage of it early especially is really, really important because time continues to go, and like right now I'm a sophomore, and I know that soon before I know it, I'll be a junior and then a senior and then graduated. And I won't be able to reach out to as many professionals because I know that not as many of them would want to talk to me, but that's okay because more the reason to do that now than ever.
Absolutely. I love how you shared that and just applaud you for saying yes to that opportunity and considering like we've been talking about like, well, what are the positive possibilities that could happen? And then just moving in that direction. But also just referencing kind of like what we've been talking about, being a student, there's so much power to that because you're absolutely correct that professionals out there, if they have a student contact them, a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, I'll help this student, like this new up and coming person, like that's awesome. And for whatever magical reason, when you no longer have the title of like student, it becomes harder to get those conversations sometimes. And it's so strange. And I don't really know why, but I know it's true because I've seen it for myself when I was a student and even now as a professional. If they're students, I am totally game to talk to them a little bit after college and just more professional. For some reason, it's not as a thing. So I love how you mentioned that. And that's just great action to take. All of you out there, just if you see those cool opportunities, consider the potential possibilities, those positive possibilities, and say yes, move towards it. But that's awesome. Well, Brittany, you have shared some incredible things with us today, and I've loved what we've been talking about. But before we end, I have one last thing that I want us to do. And so, if you've been a listener for the Student Leadership Podcast before, you'll know I have these postcards. I call them Nix It notes. When I go around and talk to students about how to nix their limits, I have them take a postcard and write a limit on the back of it, something that's been holding them back. And they're saying, you know what? No more. They're going to leave that limit behind. They're going to nix it. And they leave it with me. And I bring these home. I have them hanging up on my door and in a pile over here. And I use these as inspiration for me. But as we do on this podcast, I like to give a chance for our podcast guest to give some advice to a student like this. So, Brittany, are you down if I read one of these? You give some advice to a student?
Oh, yes, I'm so excited right now.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. So, right before we hit record, I went and grabbed this one off the door. So, let's see what it says. So, this student, here's the limit they want to nix. I get so caught up in my head overthinking things that it's hard for me to start big tasks or projects sometimes. So, Brittany, what would you say to a student like this trying to nix a limit like that?
That's a really good one. And I know that holds a lot of us back because we're looking at this mountain of a task that we have to do. And it's like, whoa, how in the world am I going to do that? Honestly, just breaking it down into smaller, more sizable tasks is something that I've found to be helpful for me. Like if I have this really long essay to write or like say a chapter in my book, I figure out what steps I want to take in order to accomplish that. I break it down into smaller pieces. Maybe I create a structure for my book chapter, or maybe I pull in different stories I know that I want to incorporate eventually, but just breaking it down into smaller things that you can do over time. So then that way it's a lot more manageable than sitting down and being like, okay, I have this task, I'm going to do it, and it's going to take me like 5 hours. So that's a lot of time, and that's a really big task. I don't really want to do it. So just like making sure that you are able to have enough time before that assignment is due is something that I would highly recommend, like starting a week early or like as soon as you're given that assignment if possible. So that way you can maximize what you do with, or like maximize the time that you have to do the assignment. And let's say that it's this long paper that you have to write, it's going to be like 10 pages or something. So maybe you tell yourself that, okay, this assignment is due in 3 weeks. For the first week, what I'm going to do is figure out what I want to write about and start that first outline. And it doesn't have to be 10 pages because I know that I'll spice it up along the way. And then during the second week, you say, okay, now I've created this outline. I know what steps I need to take to bring it from 0 to 100. And what I'm going to do in this week is I'll write the first half of it. And then in the third week, you know that you're going to finish it because half of it has been written. You have the outline for the rest of the half. And after you finish it, then you're going to look it over once more, twice more, just to make sure that everything flows well and there's no like minor mistakes here and there. And then you're going to submit it and you're going to be like, all right, cool. This wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be initially. And you turn it in and it's great. Because a lot of the time, I feel like the hardest thing to do is to get going, to get started. Because a lot of it is a lot of what prevents us from doing something is the anticipation about actually doing the thing. But at the same time, it's like if you start working on it, then you might find that it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be. And taking that leap can be hard, but also like pushing yourself to do that makes it easier, especially if you get into that habit of telling yourself, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a timer on my phone for like a minute or 2 minutes. In those 1 or 2 minutes, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'll like look through social media. I'll write down something in my journal. I'll finish filling out my calendar. I'll do something. But as soon as the timer goes off, I'm going to start this. And maybe you could set another timer for 30 minutes or something, and you'll be like, okay, I will only work on this for the first 30 minutes. That way I can get it going. And then maybe this has happened to me personally, but maybe you'll find that, oh, this actually isn't as bad as I thought. I've been working on this for 30 minutes. I kind of want to continue working on this. This is odd. And then you'll just get into your groove and you'll like soon enough, you'll have more of the project completed than you thought. And it's all because you took that first step to get started.
That is awesome. That's such great advice for this student and any of you out there that feel the same way of like sometimes I just get overwhelmed with all the possibilities, right? Overthinking it and it's preventing me from getting started. So great advice there, Brittany. Thank you so much for that. And think about this, all of you out there, if a student like this can nix a limit like that, just imagine what you can do. So thank you so much, Brittany, for spending some time with us today. We appreciate it. We all do. I speak for me and all the listeners, but I definitely appreciate it as well. And so to everyone out there, get out there and nix your limits. And we'll see you next time on the Student Leadership Podcast. Man, oh man, I hope you gained a lot from this interview with Brittany. I did. I did. And just hearing that refreshing thought of like, you know what? Life is all people, right? And the important habits of being organized, to-do lists, calendars, whatever it takes for you, but having that tempo to your life. And then adding to that the habit of keeping your relationships in check. I need to hear that. Sometimes that's not a natural thing for me to check in with friends and people I know and keep those relationships strong. And so that is a valuable piece. There was a lot there, right? But then even just taking action and just saying, you know what, there's an opportunity and I'm ready for it. I'm gonna go jump in and be able to make it happen. So many great pieces. I will make sure I keep everyone informed when Brittany's book comes out, and maybe we'll even have her back on the podcast. So without further ado, as we wrap up, please let me know what stuck out to you. Make sure you connect with me on social media, either at Nix Your Limits on Instagram or at Student Leadership Podcast. Share this episode with a friend. That's how we grow, and that's how I'm able to continue to produce these and connect with students and be able to get the word out. And so let's all help this grow together, and we'll keep making good things happen. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Student Leadership Podcast. Get out there and nix your limits.